Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to our second Inkjet webinar. We are happy to see that there are so many new names, familiar names on the attendee list. Probably not everybody is in yet, but that's not a big issue. That's the nice thing about a webinar. You can come and go as you leave. We're very excited to host this webinar. It's not the first webinar, but of course, now that it's a second webinar, we want to go into a little bit more details. We want to talk about materials that you can print. And of course, we hope that we can learn and share knowledge during this webinar. For this webinar, we have also some speakers that will help us with the webinar. We have speakers from SUSS, one of which is myself and is Peter. Please, I'm manager for sales and service here at SUSS OrelTech, especially for the Inkjet products. Along with me here is Joost Hermans. Joost is manager for applications here, Inkjet applications here in Eindhoven. Together with also the external partners. First speaker is Mike Petrel from Sun Chemical. He will be talking about the material, hotmelt material that can be jet printed. We'll have a little demo of that later on. We have Constantine from OrelTech. He will explain a little bit about the more exotic materials, and we have James Caruso from JNC. So hopefully you will enjoy this webinar. But before we go in that, as mentioned, we will explain a little bit about the materials that you can print. And so we have picked a few materials that we have printed, and we made demonstrators of these materials. The demonstrators, we have printed them on Inkjet printer, which is the R&D version called the LP50, which is behind us. And to explain a little bit about that printer, I'll leave the word to Joost.
Last, thanks for the introduction. So as said, we printed samples of our L50. See over here. It's a tabletop system, very suitable for our needs. We can place it in any lab, or we need a sturdy table for the lab. But let's have a look at some of the main components of the printer. Of course, it comes to safety cover for aid safety. Switch to this side. So over here, we have one of the main components, the main component, the print tab. In this case, printed with a Canon print out, the Canon C49 print out. But the LP50 can be equipped with various print tabs, so they can roll down to the film and even the dots that you can see. In this case, we're using the Canon print tab specifically designed to print hotmelt materials. The print tab comes inside the print tab assembly, so that's the holder you see over here. And this holder is designed so that you can easily switch between different print mounts. You can take out the holder, take a new one, different print out, and switch between different print pads to different dates within a couple of minutes. Very easy and flexible to switch between different needs, different print pads, different materials. Over here, on this side, there's a print view camera, which is a camera looking down at the substrate. That can be used for visual alignment. Recognize pictures, the substrate, the alignment, or after printing, look at the substrate to inspect the pictures printed, make sure how it's lying, for instance. On this side, there's the job view camera, which is a camera looking at the motion plate where the droplets are shooting out. So you can automatically edit images droplet formation, how the droplets are shaped, and automatically optimize the waveform with the camera, making images, making movies, so that you can also easily record it and, for instance, export directly to PowerPoint. Of course, we have substrate table. In this case, substrate table, we have packet balls, packet planting that can hold. In this case, we got a silicon wafer, 1 millimeter silicon wafer on it. Packet balls to hold it, and the table can be heated up to 90 degrees, which can be beneficial for certain based things. Maybe OrelTech will explain more about it where the inch of things solvent based material. Of course, the system has various axes. The y-axis, then you have an x-axis, print at, z-axis, and print of different heights, different substrate types, different thicknesses. You can rotate the table, but you can use the table for environment corrections. So that you don't have to rotate the image, you rotate the table to make sure that the substrate is aligned. The last axis is on the print head. You can rotate the print head to adjust for projected resolution. I won't go too much into the details, but you really want to optimize your print strategies that can be down. So those are the main components. Well, I forgot one. Maintenance station. Of course, print heads, maintenance to make sure that the motions stay aligned, that the motions keep jetting. So let's have a look at the HMI cover. So here on the HMI, we have different tabs, different options. I look at the recipes screen. Over here in the recipe screen, we can set different parameters. You just select your image, select print speeds, print resolutions, the amount of layers you want to print. So there's a huge list of recipe parameters that can be adjusted, and you can make as many recipes as you want. So for the operators and the engineers, it's easy to change between different recipes. It's a digital technique. You just select a different image and you can print a different design. You have to wait for screens, you have to wait for tasks, just a different image, and you can print the next design. Flat screen assemblies. So within the LP50, you can incorporate multiple print heads. Over here in the assembly screen, you can select which print head you want to use. You can quickly and easily change. Controls tab, as the name says, different controls. So the vacuum, the substrate table, and also the heating, the under pressure of the heat, and there's a whole lot of maintenance sequences that you can set in the controls tab as well. Next, print view camera. So over here, this camera image shows what the camera is looking at, what the print view camera, either looking at the results or looking at the print just made. In this screen, you can also set alignment. Multiple alignment set up in the software. You can select, optimize for alignment as in the print view screen. Next, drop view, which groups and plugins, naming it very logical. So in this screen, you can set drop view camera, the group add new droplets, and investigate how the droplet formation is. What is the form for the nozzle? How fast are the droplets? What is their volume? All these information in order to optimize the print recipes, optimize the waveforms. We have a simulator screen. So before doing the actual print in the simulator, you can already look at which order this system goes to print your substrate. Select and determine which nozzles are using print which droplets. You can even measure up front if you don't follow how wide your pitches are going. And last screen, alarms. Well, of course, there's no alarms in this case.
Good. Well, you got me all excited. Let's see some action.
Yeah, well, it's we already set up the printer, of course, and in this case, we set up the printer with a certain image of the whole melt demonstrated print. The image you see here on the screen. So it's designed, made for a 200 millimeter silicon wafer. A test design showing all kinds of features. Either diagonal lines, straight lines, horizontal, vertical. So this is the image we're going to print onto the wafer over here. So the next step is to press the green button and the system will start printing. So the print head is moving to its starting position, and in order to print full substrate at a high resolution, it needs several passes to print. And then, since it's a single print head is smaller and with substrate, it needs to make a couple of steps in order to cover substrate. And as you can see, the printer is moving up and down. Every time it hits the print head, is making a step so that the full substrate is printed exactly according to the design. And if you know at which resolutions you're printing, you know which print head, you can upfront calculate how many slots it should take. So now it's finished, already printed.
That's fast.
Yeah, that's fast, easy. That's a lot. I'm building of course. Yeah, and switch on. So here we have our printed wafer, the two correct. Of course, it's a silicon wafer, so it's quite shiny and reflective. But you can see the picture nicely printed on the plate.
Well, very good. Well, that looks amazing. Bring it the hot melt. Luckily, we have an expert on hot melt material with us today. Mike, are you there? If so, then come on screen.
Good evening, everyone.
Howdy, Mike. Looks like, at least on the wafer, it seemed quite impressive. This material hot melt. What kind of material is it? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes, so the chemistry of hot melt inks are quite unique. Okay, they're based upon very pure acidic waxes with additional materials to allow us to tailor the jetting and the performance in the print head, and also allow it to strip really, really cleanly.
Okay, and what kind of applications that is it used for?
Right, well, these materials are primarily used as etching and plating resists. So materials where you're looking to remove other materials or do copper plating and build up metal tracks. So they are sort of disposable surfaces, materials as such. Okay, they're particularly well suited towards textured silicon wafers because, as you could see from that demonstrator, the ink is frozen as soon as it hits the panel. So, of course, with things like textures, you've got valleys, you've got pyramids, it stays where you've put it. Okay, so that's where that really we see most of the market's development.
Yeah. And And then what are the advantages of using inkjet when using these types of materials?
Right. Well, again, although it freezes on contact, the inks are molten to start with. So actually, hot melt inks and inkjet do actually work very well together. In fact, some of the first inkjet inks that came out were based upon wax-based technologies for the graphics industry. But as I say, by being able to heat in a enclosed space, you actually give yourselves a very safe and cost-effective way of applying these inks. Then, of course, as you'll see, so the demonstrator demonstrates that you can actually use the high precision of the inkjet printing to achieve very fine gaps, which again, for things like plating, is a great benefit. And as I say, I'm aware of, technology, panels being made with a track gap or gap of about 15 microns. And of course, the final one with inkjet, a lot of the wafers that people want to print, that they're only getting thinner. Some of the newer technologies want very thin wafers. So, of course, having something which is non-contact is also very advantageous.
Yep. So, the benefits of this hot melt approach?
Well, again, because it's such unique chemistry, one that you actually get a crystalline barrier. So it's made of a crystalline base system. So unlike when you've got polymeric materials, you've actually got something which is very impervious to the acidic solutions, for example, hydrochloric acid. So you don't actually get any penetration into the actual ink itself. The second benefit is the fact that you're not trying to cure the ink. The mechanism for the pattern definition is due to freezing. This means that we can tailor the stripping as separate from the curing mechanism. So you can get a very good, clean surface and no residues, etc. because of that.
Yeah. I saw your recommendation that you don't have only one version, but there's a whole range of these hot melts. Why is that?
So again, although we would love to have a single ink, our experience tells us that there is so many different surfaces. So silicon wafers are one, okay, but of course there are tandem cell technologies, etc. You've got other materials going down, and as a result, one size doesn't fit all. So providing a range of different jetting temperatures, you can sort of balance the resistance, the strippability. For example, the lower melting inks will strip faster, but are not as robust. So again, it's to give people a sort of matrix of solutions to find the right one for them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Mike. These were actually all my questions. I'm pretty sure that there are more questions from the audience, but that's a good thing. We also have a Q&A section at the end of this webinar. So please, if you do have any questions, anyone in the audience, please feel free to write them in the Q&A section. Also, write down to whom you would like to address your question, and then we will get back to them later on. Anyway, thanks a lot, Mike. We'll see you back in the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will wait, hopefully for some interesting questions. Thank you.
I'm sure it will. Yeah. So that brings us to our next demonstrator. Joost, demonstrating here. Can you show it? This is a demonstrator that we received from OrelTech, and we have a speaker from OrelTech, Konstantin. Are you there? Hi, Konstantin.
Yeah, hi, Peter.
Nice of you to join us.
Thanks for inviting me.
How is everything there in Berlin?
Oh, it's cold and it was sunny today, so it's we're getting closer to spring, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, Looking forward to the nicer weather also here, but I cannot complain. Anyways, doesn't it? What were we looking at just now?
Yep. So what Jost has just demonstrated is a very fine printed metal pattern. And we actually prepared 3 types of demonstrators with SUSS and with your LP50, which are silver, which is a more, let's say, standard metal for electronics, gold and platinum patterns. And the last 2 are what actually I would like to focus today.
Yeah, well, very good, very good. That sounds quite expensive if you talk about gold and platinum, silver. Which type of customer would actually use
Excited material. Well, they're certainly not cheap, and that comes with the metal, with the quality of the metal. But there are some applications for which they are irreplaceable. So, for example, gold is very commonly used in biomedical application, in medical devices and bioelectronics, and because it's one of the few metals which are not toxic to a living organism, and also very few people have allergies to gold. Platinum, of course, is also sometimes used in biosensors, but nowadays probably the biggest market for platinum is in energy devices and hydrogen production devices.
Right. So we just looked at a demonstrator, and there were some patterns on them, some random patterns. What kind of patterns are these customers that these days materials? What kind of pattern do they typically print, or is there any final? What can you say about that?
Unfortunately, there are no standards. In fact, most of our customers print their own patterns. Sometimes they are even NDA protected. So we tried for our demonstrators, we tried to pick some common motifs, some very thin lines. As thin as 100 microns wide, for example. And basically high precision printing is what is interesting for these metals.
Okay. And when printing these patterns, is there any layer thickness that you would recommend, or is there?
Absolutely. So since these metals are used in industries like sensing and catalysis, very often what you need is actually low thickness. So because what counts is the surface and not the bulk, unlike electronics, for example. So our metal layers are specified for these low thicknesses, and we can go as low as 30 nanometers for some applications, up to about half a micron, 500 nanometers in others.
Quite impressive. And then when you print those materials, are there certain steps that you need to make in order to actually print that with Inkjet?
Sure. So our materials, our inks that we sell at OrelTech are particle-free inks, which are cured by cold plasma. And it is not a coincidence. We target markets, and we work with customers whose printing requirements are sometimes quite, let's say, interesting. So the flexible substrates, temperature-sensitive substrates, delicate another way, and we specialize in printing on these specific substrates. For example, curing temperature is sometimes an issue, and there are many substrates that cannot withstand even, let's say, 100 degrees. So our cold curing plasma process is actually specialized for this type of applications. In the cold plasma chamber, the temperature very rarely exceeds 60 degrees Celsius.
Of course, this is an Inkjet webinar. Why do you see Inkjet as a good alternative for these materials?
Well, honestly, you said it yourself in the beginning. These materials specifically are quite expensive, and any loss of material is crucial for mass production here. So, from as far as I know, honestly, today Inkjet, printing in general, right, and Inkjet specifically, is probably the most precise and economical deposition method for metals such as gold and platinum. It definitely leaves screen printing behind, and certainly leaves PVD behind.
Oh, thanks a lot, Gossipin. That was quite interesting. I'm very curious to see where these materials will be used in which kind of applications. And yeah, I'm sure the audience will also have quite some questions for you as well at the end. So we'll definitely circle back to you. Thanks. But then we'll see you later, the Q&A. Brings us to the next demonstrator that we have. Joost, do we have one?
In this case, it's again a silicon wafer, so semiconductor grade silicon wafer plated with polyimide.
Yeah. All right. Well, for Polyimide, we also have a speaker who can explain to us a bit more about this demonstrator. On the other end of the line, we have James Crusoe from JNC. James has a lot of questions for you as well.
Yeah, good afternoon, Peter. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So, James, what are we looking at? Polyimide, what is it used for?
Yeah, so just a little background. So as Joost mentioned, and you mentioned as well, that material you're looking at printed on silicon is polyimide, IMID, polyimide. The most important thing to note is polyimide has really been the default standard dielectric polymer used in the vast majority of electronic applications for about the last 8 decades, since the 1960s. It was originally developed by DuPont Chemical, as I said, in Wilmington, Delaware, back in the 1960s, and it's still used today. What JNC have developed in the last 10 to 15 years has been an inkjet printable version of that chemistry class. Why is it such a prevalent dielectric in the electronics industry? For a number of reasons. Number one, it has high dielectric strength, and that's critical. And number two, it also, I would say, probably secondary, is it has a very, very wide operating temperature range. So it's stable from very low temperatures to very high temperatures, upwards as 250 degrees Celsius. So for example, I'm sure everyone has seen, maybe they don't know what they're looking at, but if they've seen a typical flexible printed circuit, you can find them in every kind of electronic device. Probably many of them exist in your inkjet printer. They typically, they're flexible kind of circuitry. They typically have a bit of a yellowish, kind of like a mustard yellow color to them. That yellow color is coming from the underlying and the interlayer dielectric materials, which are polyimide, which when you print them thick enough tend to get a bit of a yellow color to them. So that's the material that you are looking at.
Very good. And SUSS offer a lot of equipment to the semiconductor industry. Within semicon, usually they work with very small features, very, very small. How would inkjet printing of this material be beneficial to the team working for semicon applications?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you. So yes, some of our polyimide materials, and we have a small product set of those, do find their way into the semiconductor industry, primarily in semiconductor packaging. When I think about semiconductors, I tend to think about, you have the packaging end of it, and then you have the chip scale end of it, right? So on the chip scale, you're talking about dimensions and the nanometer size range, right? And that's why photo patterning and photolithography is the standard default process. When you're talking about packaging, you're talking about resolutions that are in the micron range, typically, hundreds of nanometers to tens of microns, and that's an ideal range for inkjet, where inkjet really has a good home. Yeah.
And for printing these materials, are there any requirements that you need to fulfill in order to print them?
There are requirements. I typically would phrase it slightly differently to our customer base, which is when we talk to them, customers, channel partners, etc. We always talk about things like You know, what is the target substrate you're trying to print on? Because adhesion is often a significant issue, right? Especially if you're running these things at higher voltages, higher current densities, higher temperatures. You want to make sure that you're not losing adhesion to the substrate. We also, for inkjet especially, we always talk about also is resolution. So for example, what's the line and space resolution you're targeting, or dot and space resolution you're targeting? What's the kind of thickness that you're targeting, right? So that's also for inkjet, because that's its big advantage. That's something we always talk about. Then probably the third thing we typically talk to them about is what is the curing mechanism, right? So polyimide is what you would technically call thermoset material. So you print it, you raise the temperature to a certain point where you start to get a chemical condensation reaction. And that's an irreversible reaction, which leads to polymerization. So it's a thermally cured material. We also have a variety of polyacrylates, which are UV curable materials, which are slightly different. The big differentiation there, again, one is thermal, one is UV. The UV materials tend to be printed at a much thicker rate. So single pass print for a polyacrylate material, you're talking, 8 to 12 micron single pass print. Single pass print for polyimide, you're talking about probably 1 to 2 microns.
Yeah. And you mentioned customers. Which customers, which type of customers would use these materials?
Yeah, so I mean, I've obviously I can't disclose customer names, but suffice it to say, we probably have 15 customers, 20 customers, something like that, spanning probably about 8 to 12 different application areas, some of which are semiconductor packaging. Some are using this material actually not specifically as a dielectric material, but more as a more of a physical barrier, a thin, very precise physical barrier. I will say, just for interest from the audience members, we have one particular customer we've been working with on a biotech application where they're using our material as a critical path material for a new cancer detection method. So that's quite interesting. We're very supportive of them, because clearly, if that technology is successful, not only are we successful, but it could affect the lives of a lot of people in a positive way. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really like a game changer.
Potentially.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see where that leads us.
Me as well.
Yeah. Sounds great. Very good. Thanks a lot, James.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I feel I'm the only one asking the questions here, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that asks questions. So yeah, that brings us to the next bit, the next part of the webinar, maybe also a very interesting part, which is the Q&A. And for the Q&A, we will try to do our best to answer all your questions. So we will not be answering all the questions ourselves. We will also have the help of our partners, who will now also go on screen. We'll wait. All right. Okay. So we get a few questions here. The first question: do we get a recording of the meeting? Is there a recording of the previous webinar that you talked about? Well, yes and yes. After the webinar is finished, of course, we will make a recording. We will then send this through a link to you. So probably next week, you'll get this in your mailbox, as well as a link to the previous webinar. Next question. I see there's a question for resolution. So what about the printing resolution? The RDL layers are around 10 micron. Can we achieve it by printing? So shall I take this one?
So RDL distribution layers, these picture sizes 10 micron. To be honest, that is going to be extremely challenging for inkjet printing because, as mentioned in the beginning, Feature sizes are typically in the range of 50 microns. So if you want to make patterns of 10 micron, with direct patterning, that's going to be very challenging. But we do have options, of course, to inkjet print photoresist. So you can inkjet print a layer of photoresist, and then still you introduce your traditional exposure and development to make the very fine features. And then the big advantage is that where you normally would spin coat, you spin off 95% of your expensive material. With inkjet printing, you can just print the layer you need in the thickness you need, or vary the thickness if you want. So in principle, inkjet printing on photoresists can very well be used for these redistribution layers as well.
Okay. Hope that solved that question. If not, we'll try and get back to that. Another question which popped up is, what are the typical viscosities each material set is using to print? Okay. Yeah, so viscosities, yeah, it depends a little bit on the print head you used. So typically we would talk about viscosities at jetting temperature. And the materials which we just printed, the hot melt materials, they're solid at room temperature, so they have room temperature and extremely high viscosity. But when you heat them up to around 100 degrees, then the viscosity becomes in the range where it's suitable for inkjet printing, which is typically between 2 and 20 centimeters or millipascal second. Okay, well, then I have a question here for Constantine. What is the plasma curing effect on printed metal precursor, chemical or physical effect on cold plasma?
Oh, that's a great question. So we have, as I previously said, particle-free inks, which means we have metal in the form of metal cations in the ink. So when it contacts with the plasma, you have basically two effects happen at the same time. First, the organic part of the ink, the solvents and other things, the ligands, they get decomposed to small volatile components, and basically they are degraded into gas. The metal cation part of it gets reduced in the plasma to pure metal, which what allows you to get a very, very clean metallic film in the end. So in the end, after the process, the films are 99.56% metal.
And so there was another question on which type of materials were printed in the demo. So there was, what we just printed over here was a hot melt from Sun Chemical from the EMD 9700 series. So maybe, Mike, you could explain more on what is the benefit of the 9700 series?
Oh, your mic is muted, Mike.
Okay, so the 9700 series is our high temperature one. So generally we're looking at jetting it to 105 degrees C, but they say the difference between the melting point and the substrate temperature is the highest. So it freezes very quickly. So you get the highest definition with the EMD 9700 series.
Oh, we also have range 9700, 9500, and 9300.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so they vary depending on the temperature of the freezing point. Or they say at what point do they recrystallize, and that therefore gives you a difference between the substrate temperature. So, for example, again with our EMD 9325, you have the best option for wetting the substrate. Okay, because you have a high difference between the melting point, the jetting temperature, and the melting point, and therefore it will spread more between the two.
So there was another question on how easy or difficult it is to integrate on a print heads. So within the LP50, this one is equipped with a Canon print head, but we have a whole range of print heads from Konica either with 512 or 1024i, from Fujifilm, the S-Class, Q-Class, even the small throwaway cartridge that is used in a lot of laboratories, but also going into higher industrial print heads like the Samba T3L. is it easy to integrate all new printheads? And when we always check out the market, which printheads are available, which are coming available, have good discussions with the various suppliers of printheads, and look at which question or which printhead is suitable, which will give an added benefit to our product line.
Okay, so I see we have another question in from for James. So what is the biggest challenge that you see for adoption inkjet materials?
Yeah, this is Jim. Honestly, I would say overall, I think in the industry, the biggest challenge for the adoption of inkjet from, for example, an OEM standpoint is just honestly, it's the complexity of moving that technology into mass production, right? There are many cases of companies that have been successful in doing so, using inkjet in mass production for very commonly purchased consumer devices, consumer electronics. But someone who's new to that space, who is unfamiliar with that adoption process, just having them take the time and spend the money and the effort to go through that engineering challenge to have it adopted into a mass production process is just a bit of an effort. All the tools are there, right? But in our experience, the value proposition of utilizing inkjet for them has to be strong enough that it is essentially worth the economics of the time and the effort and the money to move it into mass production.
And that's where my team can help as well. And I have a team of application development engineers who are working together with the customers already from the very start of an idea. The customer has an idea, and we go together with the customer in the lab. Okay, do a proof of principle. Is this going to work out or not? Is it going to work out? And we help them with on LP50, for instance, with their process development. And take a step further, going to production. You need to write down, to determine your process windows, determine specifications for a production tool. And that's where the team of SUSS can help in creating the specifications, designing the production tools, building the production tools. We have several out there at PCB customers, Semicon, OLED, and we help them with the installation and commissioning. So as James mentioned, it's a lot about getting to know the materials and getting to know how to print them, how to optimize, testing the functionality of the material. And maybe it needs a couple of iterations that they need to make slight adjustments. And that's why we, of course, have to come back with the material suppliers to further optimize.
So there's another question to see. Have you investigated other polymeric materials for printing, like PVA materials?
I can answer that. Well, we did look into printing of PVA. We did some R&D trials, and we get a lot of questions like these types. Can you print these materials? What usually is the next step? Say, okay, you want to get in contact with customers, and in which stage of R&D, pilot production are you working? If you already want to have a solution for production, you want to have a commercial available inkjet. You want to do R&D and want to develop something, then making an in-house mixture suitable for inkjet with, for instance, PVA could be an option. And I think in the last years, over the years, we printed hundreds and hundreds of different inks, either made by customers or companies from our commercial ink supplier partners.
Okay. See other questions. See one here for Mike. Sorry. Can you explain what are the common failure points?
Right. So the most important thing to bear in mind with with the hot melt inks is the fact that they are temperature sensitive. Okay, so because they're molten to jet, there's a limitation to the process bath temperatures. It's generally about 5 degrees below the jetting temperature. The melting point. Okay, so that's why we offer a range of products which have got different jetting melting points. That's one thing, but of course, time, application, substrates are all factors in where that limit is. For example, say plating is more robust than etching because you are looking at an interface between a failure point where the failure is between the ink and the substrate. So, of course, as you plate up, you actually remove that interface on the sort of weakness of the system.
Okay, that solves that question. There's another one coming in for Constantine. Plasma curing takes additional time, or is it simultaneously with the printing? Thanks.
Plasma curing does take some time. It is usually less than, for example, if you compare it to nanoparticle inks, you need to heat up the print after for 20-30 minutes. So plasma takes much less time. Plasma takes usually 5 minutes. But you can do it in the roll-to-roll process. You can do it, of course, simultaneously with the next batch of printing.
Another question that came in. You mentioned your inks are particle-free. How exactly does it work, and what are the benefits?
Sure. So particle-free basically means easier for inkjet, right? There are no features, there are no limit to the resolution you can print. It has also improved the storage time quite considerably. So with the particle-based inks, usually you get several months. We promise at least a year of shelf life for all our inks, just because there are no stabilizers, no surfactants, and so on.
Thank you. So a question coming in on the hot melt. How do you refill the system? Very good question, because hot melt is indeed quite different than normal liquid inks. What we typically do for R&D systems is that you use the hot melt in small blocks, and the way you refill the ink is that you put the small block in a heated funnel, and this funnel is heated to 100 degrees as well, so that the small block of material melts and then comes in the print mat. Of course, if you look into production systems, there we have an ink refill system which transports the heated hot melt so that it's transported in the liquid state, which you can automatically refill while printing as well. But it's a good question, because hot melt is, in that case, much different than normal liquid inks or liquid at room temperature. So it's small blocks.
Very good. Well, I hope that all of your questions have been answered so far. There are still a few that come in, but yeah, we do have to mind the time and then wrap up. Don't worry. If you do have any questions that are still unanswered, we can come back at you with the answers after the webinar. If at some point questions come up, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will be able to get back to you on that. For the webinar that we had right now, I would like to thank all the speakers that were present and were able to explain about their materials. Mike, James, Constantine, thanks a lot for your support on this.
Thank you for organizing it, Peter.
Yeah,
You're very welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. Thanks also to all of you, all the participants. Looking at the numbers, it's in the end, great success, and we hope that you have enjoyed it. As I said, next week we will be planning on sending you a link with information about the demonstrators that we just made, the materials that we made. Also, we'll send out a package of information on those materials, and also how to reach us in case you have further questions. Thanks a lot, and hope to see you in the next webinar. Bye-bye.